welcome to the Hong Kong Arts Festival. My name is Rachel Cheung, and I'm very happy to be hosting the Artist Dialogue with my good friend Charles Richard-Hamelin, who is now in Montreal. So, Charles, can you share a little bit of your experience at the Chopin competition?
Well, of course. I could speak for hours about my experience there, but I'll try to just say a few things. When I applied to it, I was sort of new at the international competition game. So I started young to play piano, about 4 years old, but I only did like smaller competitions early on, and more like in where I'm from in Canada, so smaller regional competitions, but steadily, every year some bigger competitions. And when I went to Yale, when I met you, I sort of took a little break. But when I came back to Montreal at 24, I was 24 years old. I started applying to international competitions. And, to be honest, in this kind of game, 24 is pretty old to be starting, because most age groups are like 18, sometimes 16 to 30. But I started and I applied to a lot of competitions, and a lot of them turned me down because it's sort of a catch-22 thing. It's if you never participated or won any competitions, it's hard to enter those competitions. So I sort of gave up early on the smaller ones and applied to bigger ones. One in Montreal was pretty big, one in Seoul in Korea. And I did get accepted to those, and I got prizes in those, which sort of encouraged me to try the big one, like the Chopin competition. And so that gave me the courage. And so yeah, it made sense to me to Chopin because I think it stands out amongst the other competitions. So I thought that was an ideal competition for me, and it turned out pretty true. And yeah, it was just a fantastic experience all around, and it sort of gave me all my international career really, and I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, you were amazing. Honestly, because I was also at the competition, the one before you went in 2010, and obviously I was not very experienced, and I was really nervous because not only at the competition, but before when I was preparing, because just playing for one composer is very difficult for me at that time and very stressful. But nonetheless, I had a really wonderful experience there, especially, you get to play on that stage where at that time I was always watching on the DVD, previous competitions and the famous people who walked on that stage and play Chopin. And I was there, of course, you did too, play on the same stage, and it was really a remarkable experience for me. And after that, after the Chopin competition, I also went to other competitions. Also, some were successful, some were not, mostly not successful. But my last one was in the Cliburn competition in 2017. And yeah, that was my competition career for me. So about performance anxiety, do you have any good advice, or what do you do to combat those anxiety before or even after the performance?
Well, for me, the more stressful occasions are always with orchestra. So when I have to do concerto with orchestra, it just takes a lot of energy and a lot of concentration, and you're sort of on this tight wire when you cannot decide all of a sudden to take more time if you feel like it. It's a very collaborative effort, and yet you have to bring sort of the heroic kind of cape, and all the spotlight is on you, and you feel like the opera singer, in a big production. So it's a lot of pressure. Yeah. So what I try to do, usually you do the dress rehearsal in the morning, and hopefully that goes well. And I try to have a good sleep in the afternoon. Yeah. And then I cannot eat dinner before the concert. I'm too nervous. So the only thing that I can get into my system are bananas or yogurts, basically. Yeah. So I have a bit of that. Maybe tea. Tea can help me relax and at the same time sort of appease me and give me a little boost. And yeah. And as No mentioned, the first 5 minutes are crucial, really, to me, in a recital, but even more so in an orchestra concert, especially the orchestra where you have to wait so long, you know.
Yeah.
Like I love Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff too, or even Prokofiev 3, which is okay. You don't have to wait 2 months, but like Brahms first, I think is the hardest one to start because you know you've been through so much already musically with the orchestra, and then you have to come in with this sort of enigmatic, very sort of gray zone. So you're the one announcing the minor mode too, and you have these leaps, and it's awkward to play. It's all the difficulties at once, and it's the very first thing you play for a piece that's 50 minutes long. So, so you see what I mean? So those beginnings are so difficult. So before coming on stage, of course I run through the piece at least once, but then I focus a lot on the beginning, and to make sure I know what I want to do musically, and I know what kind of sound and what I want to do. And usually when that beginning goes well, like the first exposition, say, of a concerto, then usually the rest goes pretty well. It gives me the courage to go on and to be in the zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that we talked about it because it made me feel that I'm not alone, being nervous about the opening of whatever I'm going to play. So I also the same for me. I always repeat the opening before going on stage, and what I do recently and what I realized that is quite helpful. The method is to visualize yourself, and even to imagine yourself being on that stage before you go on the stage, or maybe 1 or 2 days before the performance. You start to practice imagining yourself on that very same stage that you are going to perform, to even to feel and to visualize the sound and your surroundings, the audience there listening to you, and even accidents like maybe some noises, some booklets dropping on the floor, the noise, and that might disrupt your concentration when you perform. Even the smell of the hall and the aircon humming through the whole venue. I think it's quite helpful tip for myself when I'm preparing for a concert. And of course, you have to visualize yourself playing on the piano and how the work goes when you perform, and what the sound is like, what is like the acoustic is like on the piano and in the hall. So that's what I have realized recently that I find helpful for combating my performance anxiety. So
yes, I do the same. I think it's very important to visualize. And my namesake, the great Marc-André Hamelin, also said to me in interviews that some of the best practicing he does is in his mind, in his head. When he goes on a walk, and he goes through the piece in his head. And when you take the means, the technical means, when you take the fingers out of it and you just sort of imagine the best way to phrase or the best way to organize a piece in your mind, it's very useful. It's useful for memory, but also to then try to make decisions on the keyboard. So you think less of what's practical and what works with your fingers, and more about just globally and ideally how the music should go. So just a little thing I wanted to add from the great Marc-André.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that the more that you know what's gonna happen, or the more that you know how you can control the performance, and the more free you would be on the stage, because you are absolutely reassured.
And that's completely true. And freedom only comes with sort of parameters, like a ground. Because it's like a composer. If a composer can write anything and he doesn't impose himself like a length or a style or a system to work within, then there's no point. There's nothing to grasp. And I find the same, like in Chopin, for instance, I think you really need a very strong, like pillars and something very grounded to then float over it. But if there's nothing holding it together, it just crumbles and makes no sense.
Yes.
So yeah, that's true.
Yes, very inspiring. So about practice, I myself, I practice a lot. Whatever it is, if it's a competition, I practice 12 to 14 hours a day to prepare. For me, maybe for other people it's too much, but for me it's the way for me to calm down and to feel really prepared, especially before a competition. So I wonder, are you comfortable with minimum, technical practice and then mental practice, or do you also practice a lot on the piano?
No, of course you have to. In the end, you have to practice on the piano, of course. I wouldn't say I've ever done more than 12 hours, that's for sure. But I think usually when people ask me how much I practice, I always say between 0 and 8 hours. So on average, it's something like 4 or 5.
Right.
But 0 because, when you have to fly to Japan or something and you have to spend 30-something hours with no piano, then there's no way to practice, of course.
Yeah.
But and sometimes even in the pandemic, sometimes I would have a project. Okay, I want to learn this piece, and I'm so focused and I'm so passionate. I can spend 8-9 hours a day for sure, if I have a very strong goal. But but for competition practicing, usually I try to do about 5 or 6, 7 maybe tops. Don't want to kill myself too much. It's also the way you practice most of the time. I always have to teach myself when I practice, because you catch yourself practicing stupidly sometimes, like repeating something very fast and loud and hoping it's going to get better.
Yes.
And no, you have to sort of teach yourself and okay, what am I doing wrong? What is not sounding right? And sometimes it's hard to know because you're doing it. So I try to record myself and then hear myself when I'm not busy playing. And then you can analyze, okay, this left hand, this voicing is off, the timing is off. And then, so I have to teach myself, because now, of course, we're older. I'm 31. I don't have access to a teacher I see every week. And nor should I at this age. I think it's important to rely on your instincts, on what you've learned, and always good to seek help sometimes. But I think it's also the time to be more independent and more to rely on yourself and be smart about it. So
absolutely.
I think it's more about practicing smart than practicing for the sake of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're the best teacher for ourselves. I also record myself when I practice, and I find it really useful to find my own faults.
Exactly. And it's difficult because I know like you, I'm sure I'd rather live in a world where I think I'm fine and I sound great and it's great. No, you have to live in the real world, especially if you record things or you're going to do things that are going to be filmed or broadcasted. Because, I'm sure you probably remember sometimes like doing a recording or anything that's recorded and hearing yourself for the first time and being shocked. Because you think it's going away a certain way when you play, but when you hear yourself, what is that? It's so different from what I thought I was doing.
Absolutely.
So it's good to live in the real world. So many people sort of, they live in this fantasy land and they believe too much what people are saying about them, like their friends or their managers or whatever. And no, you have to live in the real world. You have to listen to yourself and always improve.
Sure.
And it's always a work in progress. There's no other way to put it. It's never something that's fixed. There's not a day I wake up and now I know how to play it. So no, it's always in motion, always. And with age, I'm not very old. I'm 31, but still, I feel like there's things that are harder now than they were maybe when I was 25 or 26, even. But a lot of things are easier too. It's like the more I'm mature, the more I'm aware of everything that can go wrong, and everything that can be great too. So just. The more you know, the more you don't know, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very inspiring and constructive advice for young, aspiring musicians and pianists. So we have discussed on very interesting topics in this conversation, and I figured that it's time for some music. So here's Chopin Prelude number 15 in D flat major, also named as the Raindrop. So that was the 15th Prelude by Chopin, D-flat major Prelude. So Charles, I'm really looking forward to your 24 preludes that was recorded at Palais Montcalm, and it will be shown on the Hong Kong Arts Festival online version. Can you talk to us a little bit about your recording?
Yes, this was a project that I did back in December, just after the recording for a CD. So the last day of the recording, we had cameras come in and do a full concert of the preludes and the Andante Spianato et Grande Polonaise Brillante as well, another favorite of Chopin. And I'm very excited to present this for you in this online format. Of course, I'm very saddened that I couldn't be there for the first time in Hong Kong. I was very, very much looking forward to being here in person, but hopefully in the future I will have the chance. And also to catch up with you in real life. This has been really fun to have some news from you, and hopefully we'll catch up some more in the future.
Yes, it's really a great pleasure to have you on our Artist Dialogue, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much, Charles. Take care.
Thank you, Alum. You too, bye-bye.